Welcome in on this Thursday. So glad to have you all here. Looks like the war is over. Everything is fine. Nothing to see here. We're making agreements with Iran, Lebanon, and Israel about to have their ceasefire, which starts in it's 4 p.m. Eastern right now. It starts at 5 p.m. Eastern. So that'll be a 10-day ceasefire. The stock market is exploding right now with jubilance. But our next guest that we're going to have, Colonel Dan Davis, has some sources that say not so fast. As he posted yesterday, massive military movement and looks like perhaps the start of a massive military strike on Iran. So who do we believe? We're going to talk about that.
We are. I really like this comment. Made me laugh. Pontius POTUS.
Pontius POTUS.
That's good.
In the comment, yeah.
That one's good. Oh, we're going to talk about mandatory digital ID. Also, a new Bilderberg meeting has been exposed. And Congress is spending 8 days remembering the Holocaust. Not the Holocaust for everybody, the Holocaust for only one group. Did you know that this is a law? Has been since 1980. We're going to talk about what that law entails and which groups are excluded in a minute.
Also, I should just programming note. I'm going to be joining my friend Mark Wilburn from Neo's Capital today after the show. I hope you can join us. It's our Freedom Summit. We're going to be hanging out and talking about how to position yourself right now in these crazy financial times. So join us. I'll be joining live at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Today is 6 p.m. Eastern time. So jump on with us. Registration is limited. It's open. We'll have a link in the description if anyone wants to jump on with us. So again, 6 p.m. Eastern time after today's show.
All right, before we get started, I'd like to tell you about our friends over at Angel Studio because they have a new documentary that you might be interested in called The Death of Recess. Of course, the modern classroom didn't just evolve over time. It was built this way by powerful institutions. And once you understand what's behind it, it starts to make sense. The Angel documentary is called Death of Recess. It exposes the truth behind who's funding and shaping our education system, including the curriculum, which helps to shape your kids' worldviews. Now, billions of dollars are flowing through this system, and yet test scores are dropping. Kids are struggling more than ever. Somehow the answer is always the same: more funding, more control, less accountability. So really, it's not about recess per se. It's about what happens and what shapes the next generation. That's why platforms like Angel matters, because they are the only platforms brave enough to distribute a documentary like this, asking the questions most outlets won't touch. So if you're a parent or someone who really is passionate about education, you should watch this. Go to angel.com/redacted, join the Angel Guild, watch Death of Recess today. Again, that's angel.com/redacted.
So if you listen to our leaders, it seems like everything is fine. The war is barreling towards a close. Nothing to see here. The markets are exploding as a result of this because President Trump loves to look at the stock market and sort of base his success off of how well the stock market is doing. Pam Bondi, of course, did that as well, reminding all of us about why we can't have the Epstein files because the Dow is over 50,000. So all good, right? Everything's fine. President Trump said today in a post on Truth Social that Israel and Lebanon have agreed to begin a 10-day ceasefire. He basically touted the fact that he got them together at the table. They haven't spoken in 34 years. So now they're talking 10-day ceasefire. Will start in about, 4 p.m. Eastern. So in about 57 minutes or so, that ceasefire is set to take place. Meanwhile, Israel is carrying out last-minute terrorist attacks, blowing up civilian homes in Inata, centuries-old village in South Lebanon, making sure to get as many civilian homes and structures as possible. Take out all of these centuries-old homes there. Right ahead of this ceasefire, do what you can. Also blowing up a school. Israel loves to blow up schools and hospitals. So hitting one here in Marwan in South Lebanon, just destroying that school, that public school.
Wow.
There, they had to take that one out. President Trump spoke about an hour ago telling reporters that Iran and the United States are close to an agreement to end this war. So again, everything's fine. Listen.
The big thing we have to do is we have to make sure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, because if they do, you want to talk about problems, you'd have problems. So very important is that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, and they've agreed to that. Iran's agreed to that, and they've agreed to it very powerfully. They've agreed to give us back the nuclear dust that's way underground because of the attack we made with the B-2 bombers. So we have a lot of agreement with Iran, and I think something's going to happen very positive.
Tony Garrett in our chat room here, you can put this up on the screen. Tony Garrett says 10 days to regroup, restock, and reassess. Yes, Tony is spot on about that. Meanwhile, Russian Security Council is warning that this negotiations that's all taking place right now could just be masking this big planned strike on Iran. Colonel Daniel Davis is the host of the Deep Dive with Daniel Davis. Colonel, great to see you. Welcome back to the show. Yesterday, you dropped a bit of a bombshell with some of your sources reporting on, well, I don't want to take the words out of your mouth. So we hear all of this positivity about end of this war, ceasefires, markets are going up, everything's fine. But you have some news that maybe you can share with the massive amounts of military movement that's heading to that region.
Well, even without any of the sources that I had, I mean, just today, you had President Trump was asked at that same press conference there, if there's not a deal done, are we going to go back to war, which is next Wednesday when the ceasefire time comes to an end on the 22nd. And he said, yep, definitely. Yep, we will definitely do that. You had Secretary Hegseth this morning at his press briefing who said, we are locked and loaded and we are ready to get right back into this. If there's not a deal, then we're going to do it. So all the evidence, and we definitely have seen lots of open source reporting about a lot of ammunition and fuel and restocks of missiles have been just nonstop going during this ceasefire period from the United States and other bases that we have around the world into the region to be able to be used. But so all the pieces are definitely in place there. And, it doesn't take much of a genius to figure out that if this doesn't go off the way that an order can be given. Now, I will caveat that saying, as I personally observed in some of my combat operations in the past when I was on active duty, until an order is given, it doesn't matter what you've prepared for, what you're equipped for, what your logistics set up, et cetera. It only matters what the order is. But I can tell you militarily, all the pieces are in place to restart this thing and to go back to a kinetic engagement.
Now, 10 days is not going to mean that we've actually built so many bombs that we're in a better shape. Now, you had said before that when the war was hot and heavy, we are running out of ammunition. I don't think there's any way to replenish in just 10 days, is there? And I want you to respond to a Wall Street Journal report that the Pentagon is trying to approach major American companies like Ford and General Motors about shifting factory capacity towards weapons production. Is this possible, or is this fantasy? What do you think?
Well, it's certainly possible. I mean, that's what we did during World War II, is we converted a lot of civilian infrastructure and lots of factories and whatnot into military. So it's something there's definitely precedence for. Whether we actually do it is a separate issue. That would be, number one, very expensive, but it would also be very time consuming to get that conversion done and then to start making something, because you're talking many months, if not years, process to even change over to something else, because it's not easy to transition from civilian into military. But in terms of your first question there, we can't make a bunch of new weapons, but we can take them out of our stockpiles. We can continue to deplete them further, and that we can do by taking our war stocks from, in case we get into an unexpected war somewhere, especially, God forbid, with a peer adversary, Russia, China, North Korea, something like that. We're getting into those stocks, no matter how you want to slice it and dice it, wherever you're getting them from, whether it's pulling it back from some allies, like taking some THAADs out of South Korea or something like that, or taking anything back even from possibly some European allies. The bottom line is you can't keep going with this war unless you continue to dwindle those stocks, because you see just in the first week, I remember the report came out that there was like 3,000 interceptors had been used during that time, and we make like 650 a year. So by the math, it just automatically means that our stockpile has been deleted by that much more, and it's going to take multiple years to get all that replenishment once this war stops and we stop using them. But we haven't stopped using them yet, and especially if this pause in the fighting turns out to be just a pause, and then we have to get back into it. I mean, how long can you go like this? I doubt that we could go another month or two, and then we would be at the point to where we could literally be running out, not low, but out. We just cannot sustain a war. I mean, I've been saying this from the beginning, and I think that the Iranian side is aware of this, and I think that they have calculated, my estimate is that they say we can suck down these missiles and it'll cause us tremendous loss of life and damage, but then at the end of the day, we can outlast you. And we're not talking like the Russia-Ukraine war where 5 years from now, it could be like 3 or 4 months from now. And if the Iranian side calculates that they can endure and sustain themselves for that period of time, I don't think the U.S. can. And then we're in a position of strategic loss, even without the loss on the battlefield.
Man, it's so crazy to think about. I mean, it really is. But all of the markers are there, right, Colonel? I mean, we had the head of Mossad over 2 days ago telling us publicly that this war will not be over with Iran until there is regime change. And other markers you're hearing from the Russian side, from their intelligence, saying that this is all a mask and fakery. I'll just ask our chat room right now, do you guys believe that this is a real ceasefire? I mean, I've seen people in the chat room saying fake ceasefire, fake ceasefire, fake ceasefire. It's just crazy.
Well, it is a real ceasefire. Just definitely that. I mean, because we're not shooting missiles. They're not shooting missiles. Israel isn't shooting missiles. We're catching any. So that, in the technical sense, it is a ceasefire. Now, I called it a pause because I think that everybody, to include the Iranians and the Israelis and us, are just using it to reload because I think we had to bring it in. We'd used most of our stocks, and we needed the time to replenish our local stockpiles to be able to keep going. The Iranians have definitely taken advantage of the same opportunities. I just don't see any movement on anybody's position to where it's going to lead to an actual end of war negotiation.
Can I please circle back on just counting the beans? I'd like to count the beans, and by beans, I mean weapons. So yesterday, the Senate voted to continue arming Israel. They also declined to vote to stop further aggression in Iran. If we don't have it, how can we keep arming Israel? And what do you make of these votes?
Those votes are a very sore point with me. I think there was another one today in the House, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw the headlines in between some of my earlier shows today. And I just find that an egregious abdication of constitutional power that the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate have basically voted themselves out of any kind of association. Their job, that's one of their constitutionally mandated Article 1 jobs, is that they alone have the power to declare war. The reason they had it is so that the framers set the situation so that one dude doesn't get to decide if we go to war and send our sons and daughters off to die, no matter what anyone else thinks, that the representatives would. So it would be hard to go to war. And we have destroyed that. And now even when there's a chance to actually vote on doing your constitutional job, we punt and say, no, we're not going to do that. We are going to continue to let the chief executive violate the Constitution, violate the 1973 War Powers Act, and violate international law, and continue to do this full The Blues know better, if I'm just being honest here. It's Congress, it's a problem. But to your point a minute ago, the same issue with that of saying we're going to send this weapons and ammunition to Israel is the same one that we've got. Yeah, you can keep doing that, but the reason why we're in a red situation now is because we gave for 4 years all these weapons and ammunition to Ukraine, and now for 2.5 years to Israel, and now we're using them. And so you can keep sending them out, but you keep getting into our stockpiles. And at some point, we're going to run out because we can't manufacture them enough. It is a math problem. It is a bean counting problem, and the beans can be counted. It's not something ethereal. These are real, and we have to do something about it, or we will put our national security across the globe at risk. Because I'm telling you, Clayton, it doesn't matter how many tanks we have, how many airplanes we have, how many ships we have, if you don't have ammunition to shoot from them.
So that's what I want to ask you here as we kind of wrap up, Colonel, which is militarily, what are we looking at next? Maybe you can talk about the Strait of Hormuz. Let's talk about the Red Sea. We also saw a U.S., I believe it was a U.S. battleship today, or a U.S. aircraft carrier that had to be turned around because of the Houthis, essentially, and had to be redirected out of that range to go all the way around out of the Red Sea. Like, we can't even deal with the Houthis, and we think we're going to somehow puncture through the Strait of Hormuz. Anyway, what do you see happening next after this pause?
Yeah, that was the George W. Bush, which is coming to replace the
Right.
Ford, the USS Ford, and instead of just going through the normal, I think it's the Suez Canal down into the Red Sea, like the normal shorter path, we went all the way around Africa because we were worried that the Houthis may take it under attack. And if you get in the Red Sea there, I mean, it could be like a shooting gallery, as would be the case if we actually went into the Strait of Hormuz with our ships. Not during a ceasefire, they would be at risk of being hit by any number of different ammunition and weapon systems that the Iranians have. So that does show that we are, despite what words we use, we're aware of the limits of our power, and we don't want to put ourselves in a position to get in, having some of our, especially flagships, sunk or flames and getting burned up in the waterways there. But that also tells you that there's a reason why the Strait of Hormuz is still closed and is still controlled by the Iranian side of any oil we want to get out, because we can't compel them to do it. We can't force them out of it. And so if you start firing back again, it's not going to change that. So the strait will stay closed, and the fertilizers will still not be able to get out. The helium will not be able to get out. So that means the chip making in Asia is going to start to really suffer. And the whole supply chain issue all around the world with our whole global economy is going to start falling apart. All this because we will not accede to reality, and this is a war that is militarily unwinnable. It should never have been fought and needs to be gotten off the table quickly. But because President Trump has too much pride and can't accept that he can't do something, and he's been surrounded by people like Stephen Miller yesterday, who just keeps saying, yeah, we can do everything, just like in Venezuela, even though there's no comparison between the two situations here. But they think there is, and they're telling President Trump it's similar because we can do whatever we want to do. That's what Stephen Miller said. And if Trump is listening to that, he may believe it and be making policy decisions based on it. But it's not true, no matter how much Stephen Miller says that it is. And we're going to find out if we keep going down this path.
Is this true? Let's play this. This was Secretary of War Hegseth just a few hours ago. Take a listen to the plans for Iran.
Our negotiators have said, you, Iran, can choose a prosperous future, a golden bridge, and we hope that you do for the people of Iran. In the meantime, and for as long as it takes, we will maintain this blockade, successful blockade. But if Iran chooses poorly, then they will have a blockade and bombs dropping on infrastructure, power, and energy. And at the same time, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and our friends over at Treasury are launching Operation Economic Fury as well, maximizing economic pressure across the entirety of the government.
Okay. So to your point about Scott Bessent earlier, Colonel, yes, and now this economic fury, but also on the success of the blockade during a ceasefire. Can you unpack that?
Yeah. Okay. Most of what he said there can physically be done. You can keep the bomb. I mean, we can definitely keep the thing blockaded. We can board any ship that comes through, or if anybody tries to run it, we can physically attack it. I mean, if we wanted to, we could. I mean, just look at what the Iranians did at the first part of this by making clear that to everybody they could, and they did blow up a bunch of ships in the Persian Gulf there, just because it's a shot across the bow to say anybody else want to try it, and nobody else has that hadn't gotten permission. So we can do the same. We can block it off, and we can say, yeah, you either agree to us or we're going to start bombing. We're going to hit your energy supplies. We're going to hit your bridges. We're going to hit, all the targets that he mentioned there. We're going to put more sanctions on. Sure, we can do every one of those. But the question is, towards what end? How is that going to undo what I just described about getting the rest of the oil coming out so that the total global market, the demand is met with supply, and it doesn't send the price through the roof, and that we do get out the urea, we do get out the fertilizers, we do get out the helium so that the rest of the supply chains can start working again? How does that get to any of that? All that's going to do is to solidify that Iran who is in an existential fight. They're literally in a fight for their death, and they're not just going to give in because you put a little more pressure on them. If you couldn't do that in 6 weeks of 13,000 targets attacked. By what logic can you say another few hundred, another 2,000 or 3,000? I mean, how many is that going to work? And again, you're burning through our interceptors and our offensive with JASSM long range, with the Tomahawk cruise missiles, the THAAD interceptors, PAC-2, PAC-3 arrows. Arrow 2 and Arrow 3s. How many of those are you going to go through before you realize it's not accomplishing the objective? The Iranian side is clear that they know how to suffer and that they have calculated they can suffer longer than we can. And I think that they're right. They have more history of suffering. We don't, because everything depends on this whole supply chain of everything coming out of there. And all of it is because we chose a war that we didn't need to fight, and now we can't choose to get out of it because the cost is going to be too high personally for President Trump. But I just don't see why you're going to go down a path that is only going to exacerbate the problems that we have caused for ourselves. But that's the way I see it coming out if we try that.
That's right. Well, that's why I love tuning into your show. You're doing a really good job staying on the breaking news. And a lot of times the rest of us will go to X and we'll see the president or the secretary of war saying, we're going to do this. And you think, oh, that's so bad. I don't want us to do that. I don't want to be the bad guys. And then I go to your show and you're like, we can't do that. That's bluster.
Yeah,
there's
that's all just talk.
Yeah. So that's why I need you. So
we need you, Colonel.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on our show and keeping your show current. You can't go on vacation.
Always my pleasure.
Until this is over.
Yeah. We'll call HR.
Yeah.
We'll call HR.
Your paid time off denied, sir.
Colonel, great to see you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks very much. See you guys next time.
You bet. Thanks, Colonel. Yeah, it's a great point he's making there. And it is an existential crisis for Iran. Like the idea that they're just going to roll over. We can apply a little bit more pressure. We can apply a little bit more pressure. But this is an existential fight for their future. And, I've heard it said that Iran is technically winning because for them to win is that for them to survive, and they are surviving.
Well, right. I was watching Kevork's show the other day, Kevork Almasian, Syriana Analysis, and he had an Iranian on who was talking about what life is like in Iran right now. It's fascinating. Please go watch it. And he was talking about this Persian way of like not playing all your cards up front. And I remembered all the times I've gone to Persian New Year because I'm from Fremont, California. There's a large Persian community. The way the dinner is served is like the good stuff, you have to wait until last. They never open with their best. And that this is something that we need to be aware of, is that this is very calculated. They are waiting for us to make a mistake, which we continually are. So it's worth considering, that they have seen this through. They've been preparing for this for 47 years. And there's a reason that number continues to be brought up. We'll talk about it another day.
Yeah, we've got more news. We're going to talk about digital ID. The House of Representatives is presenting a bill now that this is the Trojan horse. This is the Trojan horse to get us all on board with digital identification. In fact, in this bill, it would require you for any operating system that you're using, Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, that you would have to have a digital ID in order to use those operating systems. And because all of these big money companies are certainly in bed within Washington, D.C., this is exactly probably going to roll out by law, and they don't have to be dragged and forced to do it. They'll willingly do it. And they'll tell you all it's for your safety, of course. That it's for your safety, it's to protect you from online predators or whatever, but it's really about control. So we're going to deep dive the digital ID, plus the wrap-up of that Bilderberg meeting the other day. What did we learn from that, and what nefarious individuals were there? We're going to deep dive all of that.
Also, I want to point out, see how I wrote there that Congress now is spending time remembering the Holocaust? I'm not denying a Holocaust. See where the quotes are? It's the fact that they only think there was one. So we're going to talk about that in a second.
But first, I want to tell you about our friends at Mizzen and Main. I'm a huge fan of these guys. I just wore one of their nice button-down shirts on Easter Sunday because these are the most comfortable shirts I've ever worn. That is no joke. That's not bluster. I wore so many dress shirts when I worked at Fox News, and I hosted the morning show there, Fox and Friends, for like 10 years, and they were incredibly uncomfortable. These Mizzen and Main shirts are the most comfortable shirts I've ever worn, and their pants. I've been wearing some of their fantastic pants as well, and the dress shirt is really, really great. It is the first shirt that I've worn that actually does both. They look polished and they feel comfortable at the same time. And the best part is, you throw them in the wash, take them out, you don't even need to iron them. That's right. They don't even need to iron. They stay sharp and feel great all day long. No compromises. Their performance fabric dress shirt, they were the ones that actually invented that no iron performance fabric, and then other people came along and tried to copy them. I'm telling you, I love these guys. Right now, Mizzen & Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase. Go to mizzenandmain.com, promo code redacted20. Get 20% off. Go to their website now. Hey, Father's Day is coming up. Maybe do a little shopping for that man in your life, or just buy something for yourself. 20% off your first purchase. mizzenandmain.com. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen & Main stores in selected states as well. So mizzenandmain.com. Use that promo code redacted20 to get 20% off. And we want to tell you about our friends at Rumble Wallet. So many of our journalist friends have been debanked. That's right. Because the banks don't like their politics or like their news coverage. I was literally sitting next to a journalist one afternoon doing an interview. He found out right in the middle of the interview that he had just been debanked for his coverage of the war in Ukraine. This happens. Well, that's why Rumble Wallet is so powerful, because it's a self-custodial wallet that lives inside an ecosystem that actually defends free speech and financial freedom. No bank is going to hold your balance. Not even Rumble can touch your funds. It's on the blockchain, and so all of your money is your money on your terms. No one can touch it. And if you're already using Bitcoin or stable coins, Rumble Wallet gives you even more power. It connects your money to a marketplace of ideas that refuses to cave to censorship. So if you're serious about sovereignty, financial and digital, this is where you level up. Go to wallet.rumble.com, search Rumble Wallet in your app store, download it, back up your recovery phrase, and move your money where it belongs, in your hands. Again, wallet.rumble.com. Download it today on whatever device you're using. Well, a new national law has been introduced to require all operating systems to have mandatory age verification. They couch it as safety, right? They want to protect you from predators or, I don't know, OnlyFans models or whatever else is out there lurking, right? This is House Resolution 8250 to require operating system providers to verify the age of any user of an operating system and for other purposes. So think Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android. What about open source Linux? I guess we'll get to that in a moment. Here it is. Here is HR 8250 to require operating system providers to verify age. Now, I think this is a Trojan horse, but maybe I could be convinced otherwise, which would be to control all of us. Catherine Austin Fitts says if global elites fully deploy digital ID systems, this is how they will control all of us. Listen.
All the great work that you have done in health and all the great work you have done in food to preserve food and health freedom, the minute they get financial transaction control, they will delete all of it. They will negate all of it. They will reverse all of it. Financial control and controlling the financial transaction train tracks is the meta control that they will use to control food and health. So I don't care what you're doing in the food and health area. If these guys get 100% digital system with a digital ID and programmable money, guess what? They're going to dictate, you don't get your vaccine this month, they're going to turn off your money. You don't transgender your kid, they're going to turn off your money.
Wow.
They're going to dictate all of your health and food policies to you. So we did a wonderful...
So, I mean, that sounds dramatic, but she doesn't seem... What I love about Catherine Austin Fitts, she's not like hyperbolic. I mean, she's been in the government. She understands exactly how these operations work. Austin Steinbart is a social engineer and the founder of Quantum Party of America, and Austin joins us to dive deep into this. Austin, great to see you again. Welcome back to the show.
Pleasure to be back with you, Clayton.
So, am I being a little hyperbolic here, a little overexcited about this idea that HR 250 is a Trojan horse that will allow them to gain control of us through this digital ID system with these operating systems? Or is this it's just safety, just protecting our kids? How do you read it?
You're not being hyperbolic at all. This is a disaster at every level. And I would say it goes even deeper than just a digital ID. It puts this ID mechanism into the core of every single device that's out there in existence. And then it not only does that, it is a 6-page bill that they delegate how that's going to go down to the FTC. Right. So it's one of those, in addition to the constitutional abomination that is the digital ID thing, the Congress is, again, just delegating their authority to the executive branch to write the law however they please. So is this biometrics? Is this ID card? Is this a face scan? Like, what even is this? It's completely up to whoever's in charge of the executive branch.
So they can just say, hey, we're going to partner with Apple. We're going to use your Face ID system, which, by the way, was developed in Israel. Apple's Face ID unlock of the phone was developed in Israel. So we can just use Face ID. We'll just use like Apple's way of getting into this. So like all these companies need to be on board. Microsoft, we'll scan your retina, scan your face. We'll have a database of that, and we'll confirm that you are of age. Like, who's going to be in charge of this database? Who's going to be in charge of this? The federal government?
Well, they're trying to make the operating system providers in charge of this. It kind of is piggybacking on something that already happened here in California, where they are saying that people need to put their age in, and then every single website or every single service they use, it handshakes with that original age verification thing. So they are essentially trying to put this in an operating system level. And then every app you visit, every website you go to, every service you use, it will go and read that age field on your operating system. So it is a privacy nightmare, and it's a cybersecurity nightmare, right? Because they're essentially saying that every single service that you use has to interact with that core files on your operating system.
But at the heart of it is the digital ID, right? So forget just the age piece of it. It is about making sure that they have this digital ID across all of these platforms now, so that this will invade kind of every aspect of our life, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about doing it in a way that, we use devices, we can't get around that. And it's putting it in at a molecular level. The thing is, though, how would they even do this, right? With Apple, with Microsoft, they can go lean on these guys to do this. But with Linux, Linux is what runs a lot of the data centers, runs a lot of the routers, what runs a lot of these industrial control systems. How do they force an open source kind of like volunteer run program to embed this in their operating system?
Right. I mean, it's open source. How do you do that with Linux? I guess that was sort of my question at the beginning, right? Like, is that even possible?
Well, it's possible for them to try to do that, to try to build it into whatever is the retail distribution of Linux. But anybody who knows how to use Linux, you have root access to the system. You could just delete that core file. There'll be all kinds of workarounds for this. Furthermore, because they want it to be on every single device out there. So let's say, you have a POS system at a restaurant, or like a front desk check-in computer at a hotel, or any number of things that are community controlled computers. Who puts their ID in there, and how exactly does that work? It just doesn't.
Right. I just don't know how they're going to, you're right about this. How are they going to absolutely implement this? But of course, this is like really the first step. I mean, this digital ID, I think, is the part of the larger CBDC, central bank digital currency. It's about the control. I don't know if you heard the soundbite there from Catherine Austin Fitts, where she was talking about, of course, if you don't meet certain health identifiers, that you're not allowed to travel. If you haven't done X, Y, and Z, we're not going to allow you to do this. All tied to your digital ID. Do you know like what mechanisms they're planning to have in place where there would be sort of a database tied to your digital ID?
I think the Real ID system was setting the stage for that, because right now you effectively have, it's not a fully digital ID because you don't use the digital end of it, but they have a database that's a federal database that every time you go to a gas station, scan that thing, or walk through an airport, or do anything, it pings the database, and it's able to be seen where you're going and what you're doing. So I think they're trying to piggyback it off of that, and then just turn it into a digital system. They potentially will use some catchy words like blockchain and other stuff to try to make us feel better about it. But we need a. One of the things we do with Quantum Party here, one of the things we're advocating is like we need to update our Bill of Rights to comport with the reality that is technology world here. Right now, we have a constitution that the founders, they could have never foreseen some of the stuff that we're dealing with here. And our government just doesn't seem to care about, the first, second, or fourth or sixth amendments at all. And so how are we going to adjust our system here to work with technology land? And if we don't, we're pretty much going to get dragged kicking and screaming into this very centralized control system here. And as we see with this, the oil markets and the war in Ukraine and the de-dollarization pressure, it's not like they're going to let us vote on this or that we're going to have a say. It's kind of being set up to where we're just going to get dumped into it because everything's going to be like there's going to be no other choice.
Some people have called this the great taking, right? They're going to be sort of consolidating all of this power. Larry Fink has just admitted openly about what's going to happen with every currency and financial asset will be digitized. He says it's coming. Of course, they had a BlackRock, also the World Economic Forum taking over for Klaus Schwab. Just listen to him briefly, what he said just the other day.
Not spending enough time talking about how quickly we're going to tokenize every financial asset and the opportunity we're going to have a digital wallet and moving ETFs and other things through a digital wallet. And I think that's going to happen worldwide very rapidly. And I think most countries are ill-prepared for that and underappreciate how technology is changing that, not unlike how technology is changing AI and other things. It will be changing the technology around the plumbing of finance.
Yeah, so his point...
Not spending enough time talking about...
Sorry about that. His point, of course, is that these countries aren't prepared for it. It's coming. And we've been talking too much about AI. That was one of his things. We're talking too much about AI. We need to be talking more about central bank digital currencies and the tokenization and the digital tied to your digital ID, because it's absolutely coming.
Absolutely. And the blockchain technologies in and of themselves aren't intrinsically bad. It's just we have these people who are influenced by this particular foreign country and who don't necessarily have our freedom and our constitutional rights in mind as they architect this. So at a core level, tokenized assets isn't necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, right? Right. If I'm an investor and I go buy stock in a private company, and that's tokenized. Right now, you have to wait for a formal liquidity event to get out of that or to trade that or to use that for anything. So it would be nice if you have a rapidly appreciating asset or a position in a private company that you could use that essentially in a way that's just as liquid as cash and use that to kind of make trades and wheel or deal your way into more wealth. It would be a good tool. But when it's very centrally controlled like that, then that's when it gets scary. Because as we see right now, their definitions of what's hateful, their definitions of what speech is dangerous. We're seeing the other side of the coin. Under Biden, we saw, you can't criticize vaccines, you can't criticize, trans and kids, you can't criticize this level of pieties. And now we are seeing the woke right. And I would call that aspect the pro-censorship, anti-Second Amendment.
Yes.
Everything is anti-Semitic. I would call them the woke right, not the people that are criticizing that the woke right. Right? Because what is the hallmarks of wokeism? It's cancel anybody who disagrees with you, blow up your family and friend relationships over anything you perceive to be racist. Don't let any countervailing facts influence your opinion whatsoever. Just all the hallmarks of wokeness do not apply to kind of this war critical section of the internet. They apply to the other side. So it's a very comical case study and projection there.
No, it's very smart, very smart. And you're absolutely right. We are slow marching into the destruction of the United States Bill of Rights, one after the other. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you again, and really appreciate your analysis on this. So call your members of Congress and tell them you do not support this bill. Tell them to burn this thing down right now. Great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me, Clayton.
You bet. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about the Bilderbergs, and their meeting just wrapped up, talking about nefarious globalists who don't have your best interests at heart. Why was MI6 there? Why was the head of MI6 at the Bilderberg? Peter Thiel was there. Of course, all the globalists were there at the Bilderberg meeting. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends at Just Thrive, because when you're feeling not on, like you can't focus, you're dragging by 2 p.m. or your stomach feels like it fights you after every meal. Well, here's the thing. Those are not random symptoms. This is showing you that your gut needs some attention. That's why we love Just Thrive Probiotic. Let me say that better. Just Thrive Probiotic. Unlike other brands that make big promises but fall short in your stomach, Just Thrive is the only probiotic clinically proven to arrive in your gut 100% alive. That means the result is better digestion, healthy immunity, and even more energy to tackle your day. But don't take our word for it. You can try Just Thrive Probiotic for 90 days and see how much better you feel. It comes in a capsule or a berry-flavored gummy, and if you don't notice a difference, they will refund every penny, even if the bottle is empty. So for over a decade, Just Thrive has been helping thousands of people take control of their health with science-backed solutions you can trust, from their award-winning probiotics to their full line of gut, immune, and brain health supplements. Just Thrive is ready to help you live your healthiest life. Start your 90-day risk-free trial today at justthrivehealth.com/redacted. You can save 20% on your order. So you can see it there on the screen, justthrivehealth.com/redacted. A lot of soft consonants there. That's why I just want to make sure that you can read it. Just Thrive Health.
Here's some hard consonants. Bilderberg. While the public was busy watching the daily chaos cycle of one of the most secretive power gatherings in the world was happening in Washington, D.C., the 72nd Bilderberg meeting ran from April 9th to April 12th, just wrapped up at the Salamander Hotel. Some journalists tried to get their hands on some information there. They were trying to get some people on camera. Like Dan Dix was capturing a bunch of information there as well. But the official agenda had AI, China, Russia, the Middle East, the transatlantic defense industrial relationship, even the future of warfare was a big discussion of the Bilderbergs. Here's the head of MI6. She's just walking out casually. There she is. Like, she's not even trying to hide it. Like Britain's top spy is at the Bilderbergs meeting there. No, notice that green fence that they set up. They set up this big green fence to try to keep the press away. But unfortunately, the wind in Washington just kept blowing it down. I just hope that's just like, I don't know, that's like a metaphor. I hope that that's a metaphor for all the wind that's blowing this down. Dan Dix captured this footage outside the hotel. He's like, I'm a journalist. I'm not going to help you pick this damn thing up. It keeps blowing down. I'm just going to get more footage. Peter Thiel, also there. He was caught on camera. Plenty of other globalists. There's Peter Thiel coming out there. Your friend from Palantir. Andrew Goff is a researcher, writer, and television presenter on various historical conundrums, and joins us once again here on the show to talk about the Bilderbergs, the secret meeting, and what we may have uncovered. Andrew, great to see you. Welcome back.
Thanks so much, guys. It's a pleasure to be back. Thanks for having me on the show.
Our pleasure. So when we throw the term Bilderbergs around, for some people, they don't realize it's, goes back 70 some years. But what exactly is the Bilderberg organization, and why should we even care about it?
Organizations like this, I really try to take the straight and narrow and use Occam's razor and give them the benefit of the doubt at the start. But it doesn't take long to realize that the Bilderberg Group is not a think tank with an agenda that's looking after our best interest. It appears to be far more nefarious. And I always like to look at the origins of this group. The Bilderberg Hotel, the Netherlands, 1954. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands created this group of elite, from politicians to media to CEOs of high-tech companies and just international who's who, to come together. Now, what's interesting about him is he was a card-carrying Nazi. He was convicted of bribes with Lockheed. He was in unison with David Rockefeller. So big yellow, red flags right at the start, the conception of the Bilderberg Group. As you said, an organization that just celebrated its 72nd annual meeting, alternating between Europe. Last year was Stockholm, and this year was Washington, D.C.
Now, can you compare it to the World Economic Forum? That maybe gets a little bit more press, but we understand and we can see the streams that these are powerful people making decisions. They are unelected, and usually they're making decisions in the interest of the ruling class.
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, Davos, the World Economic Forum, it's like 2,500 people. They publish their agenda. They have live streams. They're not trying to hide anything. It's all the nefarious sort of censorship and world dominance is out there for everyone to see. Now, compare and contrast that with the Bilderberg Group, which is between 100 and 150 members, invitation only, private. They announce the location just weeks before every year. Doesn't stop good journalists from finding out and filming and seeing who's actually attending. And what's really interesting about them is they use the Chatham House rules. And this in part is how we know what it is their agenda is and what they're talking about. Chatham House, 1927, the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London came up with this policy of it's okay to have a private meeting and you can talk about what was discussed publicly, but you can't say who said it or who they said it to. So in that regards, it's semi-private, but that's how we learn about the agenda of what the Bilderberg Group is on about. And the topics are, as Clayton has shared, really cutting edge. AI, right? The future of warfare. Why can't we have an agenda item that says the future of world peace?
Right.
They have
because you have Peter Thiel there and Palantir, who's making billions of dollars off of the war. So they can't have peace talk.
Oh, exactly. And you mentioned like the chief of MI6 attending. Now, MI6 is I'm speaking to you from London tonight, and they're the equivalent of our CIA, right? And they focus only on international affairs. They can't make policy. They can't arrest anyone. But guess what their ethos is? It's all about relationships, access, and influence. And that's exactly what Bilderberg is about. It's like these octopus, spidery tentacles going out into the world to disseminate the propaganda that was on the agenda in the annual meeting.
Right. You're great point, because there's no voting. There's no resolutions. There's no policy statements. They don't issue anything. It's all about getting like Peter Thiel and the head of MI6 and these other nefarious players in a room together so they can rub elbows. But that's really where the real power comes from. That's where there might not be any votes or any policy papers, but that's really where all the policy comes from. These clowns getting together. So do we get any pieces of information at all out of this meeting? Like, do we know where they stand on AI, Andrew? Do we know where they stand on the future of warfare? Do we know where they stand on China and Russia and these other things that were on the agenda? Or are we just left to guess?
Well, I think we can infer based upon the agenda what their position is going to be. And for instance, it's really interesting. They had an agenda topic about Arctic security. And what is that? Well, it's Greenland, and they have like really high officials, both current and past, from Greenland present, as if to tell Trump that, hey, this is not going to be as easy as you think it is. But the Arctic security is interesting because the very first Bilderberg meeting, guess what was on the agenda? What was happening at that time was the Antarctica Treaty. You have Cold War documents talking about Russia studying the firmament, that snow globe that encapsulates Earth. And you need an organization just to make sure you can disseminate the propaganda to control these things. So what's going on with preventing Trump from taking over Greenland? Is there something beyond that they're trying to control? Maybe it's they don't want people talking about BlackRock. What is BlackRock? Well, not the conglomerate, but the magnetic center of the Earth. There's so much that Bilderberg can influence, especially when at its core are all the media heads of the world's, leading magazines and newspapers.
No, that's such a great point. So very, yeah.
Clayton brought up, what are their stances on Russia and China? There are no Eastern leaders. It is all Western leaders and Western press.
Well, there are some. I mean, we saw that, like one of the senior politicians from Poland attending. It's a real international who's who. And the way that I kind of like to think about it is if you have NATO, which is really the strong arm of the transatlantic sort of alliance. And guess what? That was on the agenda. What's going to happen if Trump pulls out of NATO? They're discussing that, right? But so if NATO is the transatlantic arm, then Bilderberg is the brains, and MI6 is sort of the kind of the arms and legs are going out because they have no other objective, MI6, other than just to spy and report back to the government. And I think it's interesting. It's a really quick aside. MI6, that's James Bond. 007. What's 007? It's the signature of the most famous alchemist in England, John Dee. And so it's almost as though the author of James Bond, Ian Fleming, who himself was, into this whole international spy ring, is trying to tell us that these organizations have an esoteric element to them. They're not just pure think tanks or nefarious organizations. There's something just a bit weird about them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we found that in the Epstein class.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we can't really know how much of that demonic, dirty, satanic, stuff is on the agenda there. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But we know that a lot of people who protected that were there. So
for sure.
So we can draw our inferences.
And look at the founding fathers, Nazi card carrying. And by the way, I think in 50 years, 100 years for sure, the world's going to look at the Nazi era perhaps differently. Today, if we talk about that subject, we can be extradited to prison. That tells me there's a lot of untruths that have been hidden, a lot of truths that have been hidden about that subject. So it doesn't make the founder of the Bilderberg a bad guy, but he's been convicted of all sorts of nefarious things. And, that's the foundation of this organization. And it really doesn't seem as though it's changed very much over the decades.
That's right.
It's absolutely fascinating. Andrew, thank you for that. And I've been saying for a while that we are going to war over the Arctic Circle. That is coming. Just look at what's unfolding with these ice cutters, Russia, China, and having control of that area. And if you want to get even more conspiratorial, look at Billy Meyer. Billy Meyer's predictions about the war that is coming to the Arctic. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, look at Trump trying to acquire. We have Alaska, right? Then the Canada, then Greenland. You've surrounded BlackRock, and that's a whole nother subject as to why that is so important.
Yeah, I mean, that shipping lane just absolutely vital as that ice begins to melt. Andrew, great to see you. Thank you so much. Thanks for staying up late for us over there in London. We really appreciate your thoughts on that, especially given the fact that the head of MI6 from your neck of the woods was in attendance, showing her face. Thanks so much, Andrew. Great to see you.
My pleasure.
All right. Speaking of the Nazis, coming up, we're going to talk about why Congress is remembering the Holocaust, but only one. When there were, there was genocides happening across the globe during World War II, but only one group's suffering gets elevated. You probably can guess who that is. And we're going to tell you who are the groups that are left out on purpose. I can prove that it's on purpose. But first, we want to tell you about our friends at Lear Capital, because the mainstream media wants you to believe that the old 60-40 portfolio is your safe haven when you park your dying bonds, while inflation eats your lunch, basically, because savers are losers. Now, Clayton and I have been making sure that we take our dollars and invest them in performing assets while we still can, while the economy is still somewhat recognizable. Look at this. Morgan Stanley just shredded the rule book. They're calling for a 60-20-20 split. That's 20% precious metals. They're literally replacing half of your bonds, that 40% I talked about, with gold and silver. Well, why? Because central banks banks are building up their reserves of gold at a record rate. Industrial demand for silver, for solar and technology is creating a massive physical debt. You know that the dollar is weak, and so they're sprinting for the exits. And of course, Deutsche Bank is projecting gold could soar to $6,000 an ounce this year. It's not just about profit, it's about portfolio insurance. Geopolitical instability is not going away, neither is the debt. So that's why you need to look into investing in metals with our friends at Lear Capital. They've been in this game for over 25 years. They've handled billions of transactions for people just like you. You literally can call them and ask them any question, no matter how fundamental, and they are patient and kind, and they will help you look at your portfolio and decide what kind of investments you'd like to make, either in an IRA or at some kind of arm's distance transaction, or do you want to have it in your house? They can help you with that too. So call them at 800-613-3557 or go to LearRedacted.com. You can get up to $20,000 in free bonus metals with a qualified purchase. So again, go to LearRedacted.com. One more time, that's LearRedacted.com. Well, this week, Congress is participating in 8 days of ceremonies called the Days of Remembrance to commemorate the Holocaust. So that's 8 days that Congress is using taxpayer money to commemorate only the Jewish Holocaust, only that one. Only one group gets celebrated and remembered during this. Victims of genocides that happened at the same time during the same war are excluded from this event quite on purpose. Of course, the optics are not great on social media. People are expressing outrage that Congress would do this at a time when Israel is invading Lebanon, has ethnically cleansed Gaza, is working on the West Bank, all in the name of Judaism. People feel that there are more timely genocides to talk about. But I want to remind you that even though, yes, it feels like not a great time to do this, they have to, not just for their AIPAC handlers, but because it is the law. In 1980, Congress passed this Public Law 96-388. I think it is quite a coincidence that it passed on October 7th because that was not a holiday in 1980. It was in 2023 when the October 7th massacre happened in Israel. But again, it's just possibly a coincidence. Nevertheless, the law was passed unanimously by Congress, establishing that the United States would have a memorial council that was required to plan this annual event in perpetuity. Also, it was required to build the Holocaust Museum with U.S. taxpayer dollars and continuously provide recommendations to the President's Commission for things they might not have thought about to continuously remember the Holocaust. They have done this every year since. And what's so wrong with it? Well, nothing is wrong with it on its face, except the fact that it excludes other groups who were killed in genocides similarly during the same time and the same war with the same racial targeting. The Holocaust Museum, for example, that came out of this bill was created with taxpayer dollars to commemorate a genocide that did not happen on our soil and purposely excludes the Armenians and other groups. Now, this book was written years ago by Edward Linenthal, and he talks about how the Armenian genocide was considered when the museum was being built, but ultimately left out of the museum's central exhibits as part of a deliberate effort to define the Holocaust only as one group suffering in a bounded historical event. Now, Norm Finkelstein says that Jewish groups opposed this vigorously. You cannot include the Armenians. Absolutely not. They threw a big fit and they got their way. Mentions of the Armenians finally did happen in 2019 when Congress voted to include them. And then in 2021, the Biden administration said that they could be included in this museum. Now, you could argue, okay, the Armenian genocide happened decades earlier, before the Jewish Holocaust. It didn't really have anything to do with the U.S. military, so that's why we excluded it. Maybe. But in that case, why exclude other groups that were killed in genocides during the same time period, the same war, and were similarly targeted for religion and race? Can you answer that question? I was thinking today, there were 20 million Chinese killed in a genocide in World War II by the Imperial Japanese. There are about equal numbers Chinese Americans to Jewish Americans, but they don't have any congressional bill that requires remembrance of their genocide whatsoever. Now, I've brought about a list. It is by no means exhaustive of other groups that suffered genocides in similar either percentages or numbers, death counts, during World War II than the Jewish genocide. Now, every time I bring a list like this, people say, well, we have such a smart audience. And they always say, what about this group or that group? I very much welcome your additions to this list. But a cursory look would tell you who is purposely excluded from the Congressional Day of Remembrance. The Bolsheviks, we can sort of put an asterisk on because this happened in just the few years before World War II was formally bracketed, but still, that's Bolshevik persecution of Christians, 100,000 to 1 million. The numbers are upwards of 1 million if you really look into it, and there is no commemorance of this, no education in American public school, nothing. But even if we're looking just at World War II, we can count at least 15 to 18 million Soviets, civilians, not just, and prisoners of war, not just military. If we add military, that number I think goes over 30. Non-Jewish Poles, 2 million. The Roma, or Gypsies as they are called, suffered higher percentages of depopulation than the Jews during the same Holocaust at the hands of the Nazis. Ethiopians under Italian occupation is in the range of 300 to 700,000. Homosexuals, 5 to 15,000. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I've said that several times, and it's a very important part of Jehovah's Witness identity that they were targeted for their religion by the Nazis during the Holocaust. They do have a footnote in the Holocaust Museum. Chinese civilians at the hands of Imperial Japan, between, I think it's upwards of 20. This is a very conservative 10 to 20. Koreans, close to 1 million, by some counts 2. Southeast Asians at the time of the Imperial Japanese is upwards of 10 million. So when I mention that, there are other groups that suffered a genocide in similar manner, people say, oh no, Jews were the only one targeted for their race and religion. Wrong. Tell that to the Chinese. Or, oh no, Jews were the only ones who were systematically targeted in mass and organized killing. Wrong. Study the Imperial Japanese. Or, oh, the Jews were the only ones who had torture and medical experimentation. Again, wrong. Look into Unit 731. In Japan, that was the stuff of nightmares, every bit as horrific as the Mengele labs. And I have mentioned before, I am the descendant of a Hawaiian. My grandfather was a Hawaiian merchant marine. He was a victim of bombing by Imperial Japan during World War II when he was in the Philippines. And that was a civilian maritime service that supported the efforts and faced combat conditions. And in fact, the U.S. Merchant Marine suffered one of the highest casualty rates of any U.S. service during World War II. Now, the atrocities he saw, he never spoke about to us kids, and his cousin said he was never the same after the war. But none of this, his story, our story, is excluded from Congressional Remembrance Day. So again, I ask you, why would Congress go so far out of their way to honor only one group suffering during the same time period and purposely exclude others? That's my question. Now, when I argue about this on X, people say you're a Nazi for wanting to include other groups suffering, not exclude Jewish people. And if this were, in fact, a day of Chinese remembrance, I would be saying, what about the Jews? But only one group is getting this 8 days of commemorance. So, at no point have I downplayed Jewish atrocities during this. I have just rejected selective historical retelling and memorialization. So let me know what you think of Congress using our time and money to do this.
I think it's pretty telling that as part of the plans for building the museum, they had like a list of other Holocausts, other people who were as part of the Holocaust, the Armenians, et cetera. And they're like, we got to keep it focused so that they get all of the, all of the sympathy.
Yeah.
All of the focus is around that. It's just, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Of course. Yeah, let us know. Fascinating. Let us know your thoughts on that in the comments.
And who you think I may have excluded from this?
People are saying, the Irish. People are mentioning other massacres that have happened, obviously Srebrenica and other things like that over the years. But this is specifically around World War II. And, of course, the people that lost their lives in the targeted ethnic cleansing during that war.
And maybe that's a valid point. Like, should we expand it to other time periods?
Well, now,
why just this war as well?
Now, Holocaust, why don't we add Palestinians now into
the Congo?
Why don't you add Congo, Gaza, Bosnia and Herzegovina? Why don't we add in all sorts of different current ethnic? Why don't we add in Rwanda, the Rwandan genocide?
Excellent point. Yes.
Just every time there's a new genocide while the world sleeps and we watch it unfold live on social media, no one does any freaking thing about it, and they allow children to get shot in the head. By the way, did you see the BBC's report? Holy shit, the BBC actually did some actual journalism and confirmed that the IDF were using little children as target practice. Go seek the report out on X. Watch it yourself. It's absolutely horrifying. That for fun, the IDF thought it'd be fun to shoot little kids in the head and use them as target practice. So seek out that BBC report. But that's happening right now. We just keep adding genocides upon genocides into this.
We can't. I mean, not everyone can have a building in a congressional 8-day, I guess.
Yeah.
Some lives matter more than others.
And school field trips. We have to go and watch Schindler's List, right? And we have to go to the Holocaust Memorial Museum so we can just learn about one group that set this up so we can exclude everybody else who's also been killed.
Right. I was talking to my daughter about this. She's an 8th grader and just talking about my papa. And she was like, what? There was another genocide? We only studied the one. And I was like, yes, you are a descendant of someone who experienced it. It's just not a part of our educational system. And I just want you to ask why. And it does not diminish Jewish suffering to add in other groups. It may diminish the power to exploit it. That's all I'm saying, right? So
do we mention that's a good point. Someone said, do you mention the Germans right after World War II, who also suffered at the hands of that?
Valid.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Again. So that's a great point. Let us know your thoughts on all of this. Join me shortly in about
40 minutes, 50 minutes.
Yeah, about 50 minutes. I'm going to be live joining Mark Wilburn for the Freedom Trading Summit. If you guys can join, I'd love you to have us join because we're going to jump on this free webinar and hang out. We're going to talk about basically financial freedom given this crazy market volatility right now. So I'm going to hang out with Mark. And I think thousands of you have already signed up. Again, it's totally free, but there's a limited amount. I think there's 5,000 it's limited to. So try to get in if you can. I'd love to have you guys on there. Again, that's about, it's at 6 p.m. Eastern time today. If you can join us, I'm going to join at the top and hang out a little bit with the group. So please join us if you can. And we'll have a link in the description if you want to check on that as well.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for being here with us. We'll be back on Monday. We're live Monday through Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, and we will have content for you throughout the week. So stick with us here on Redacted. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye now.